Welcome back to the Hard Truths podcast. I am your host, Denver Biddle III, and joining me, as usual, you know what time it is my co-host, Steve Traub. Steve, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's Friday.
Yes, sir.
Don't really have, crazy amount of plans, but sometimes it's good to have no plans. You just want to just relax,
I'm not capable of that, but
I get it. Yeah. My calendar is probably going to fill up very quickly.
Yeah.
Starting after work.
I love that.
Because I also cannot relax.
Yeah.
I have that problem.
You got to hang out with the kittens, though.
Good thing that they, so now, now that I'm going to have some time, I'm probably going to spoil the mess out of them.
I love that for you.
Buy a bunch of things that they don't need. But anyway, so this is episode 4 in our, I guess, again, mini series. We got to figure out some kind of branding for this thing. Mm-hmm. But I've been describing it as Fix and Flipping 101. We are coming from the standpoint that you don't know anything about fix and flipping. You just aspire to be a real estate investor, and fixing and flipping is your method of your exit strategy of choice for all intents and purposes. And this is episode 4 in that mini series. And today we're going to be dealing with the numbers, right? I kind of alluded back in the previous episode to knowing your numbers, threw that phrase around a couple of times. And I'm pretty sure you may or may not have heard about that in business, just in general, right? Knowing your numbers. Well, today we're going to dive into knowing your numbers, how to know your numbers, how to run the numbers, and really just, talking about how to calculate your profit, because at the end of the day, that's what we're in this for, to make money, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So, I guess where we should get started is the planning aspect, right? Because again, as our boss said in one of our webinars, Scott Lurie, he said that all of the profit is in the planning. And that's, I think it's pretty true, right?
That feels factually accurate to me.
Yeah. So with that, let's start with why is planning so important?
Well, there's a few different reasons. I think overall, just the biggest reason is you want to set yourself up for success. Like you said, when you have a plan and you can stick to your plan, chances are, if you did your homework correctly, you will be successful. So there's certainly a lot of situations in which you and I have seen firsthand, frankly, including today, where somebody had a plan. He stuck to his plan. His house looks fantastic.
Beautiful.
He's going on the market tonight. It's been 6 weeks, and he is ready to make some money and change a family's life. So getting your numbers and doing your research up front, as we talked about, like do your damn research. We're going to come back to that. But be prepared as to what it's going to take to make your project successful and ultimately make you successful in that project. So we're going to just kind of get into a couple of the different, items that go on and things that you should think about, and making sure you're understanding what questions to ask yourself, what questions to ask, hopefully, your mentor or your general contractor or your lender, and making sure, again, that you're evaluating the entire project and to keep yourself on track, frankly. So speaking of staying on track, we're going to get into this. So
let's do it.
Why are getting your numbers so damn important? A successful flip really hinges on the fact that you've thought out your budget, you understand what items may go into that budget, and ultimately your budget can then project your timeline, and you have an idea of, is this project going to work in whatever timeline I have? So just because I love stats and I love numbers, I'm going to run with a lot of this, but as you know, I'm going to ask you a question. Hopefully you get it wrong so I can correct you, but we'll find out.
Let's do it.
So according to recent data, how many % of new flippers experience financial losses due to underestimating repair costs and or overestimating ARV? We know what ARV stands for, after repaired value. What do you think that answer would be?
I'm just going to say 40%. I have no basis for this.
That's okay. You're actually, again, you're close. Approximately 30% of new investors, or new flippers, I should say, maybe haven't gone through, we'll call this our crash course, but they haven't had an opportunity to think about some of the things that go into it, or maybe they just didn't have a great mentor, didn't have a general contractor, whatever it is. 30% of the people who are flipping were not successful. We do not want anyone in that 30% rate in any way, shape, and form. So again, we want to make sure we're giving you the tools to ultimately be successful.
So stay tuned. Keep listening.
Yes, exactly. So there are a few reasons why people's plans don't work out according to plan. And a few of the really common, budgeting issues we'll say is clients underestimating renovation costs. We talked about it last week. Get in there with a general contractor, at least get the place inspected, have an idea of what it needs for repairs. Because when you say, hey, I'm buying a house for $100K, it needs $50,000 of renovations. If that number is 70, that is eating into your profits considerably if there are profits left at that point. So underestimating your renovation costs, again, make sure that you're working with a professional in some facet to help you come up with those numbers. Number two, overestimating sales price, which is why a hard money lender will either do a desk appraisal like us, or they'll do a field appraisal, which we had talked about in a previous episode. They want to make sure that when you are buying the house for $100K, you're putting 50 into it, whatever their after repaired value limitations are, or expectations, guardrails, whatever you want to call it. They want to make sure that they agree when you say that property is worth 250. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It's an estimation of value. It is an opinion. However, an opinion based on data is oftentimes factually accurate or really close to being accurate.
Yeah. So on that, as you're speaking through this, like if you want to relate this back to your everyday life, like I've done this several times before, right? Like I like to be an organized fellow, and I have I've got a budget for myself, right? A monthly budget. What are my monthly expenses? And some categories, obviously, like you have a hard and fast number, like rent, for example, or your phone bill. Then other things you have to estimate because you might not buy the same food, same groceries every week, or, things like that. And I feel like there's two kinds of people. You got people that have the hopeful estimates, right? This is what I would like my food budget to be. This is what I would like my, insert category budget to be. And then you have people that are realists, right? They're like, okay, I think my food budget is $150 a month, but maybe I should look at what is my grocery bill every week and like actually look at my bank statements, because then I can get an accurate representation of what my grocery bill is every month.
Yeah.
And so I, based on, not wanting to be in that 30%, right? Like I know personally, if I was doing this, I wouldn't want to be in that 30%. Do what you can to get as realistic figures and numbers as possible. And I think, I don't know, maybe sometimes people are afraid to do that because it might be eating into their, initial estimate of whatever their profits, they thought they were going to be, or they're like, oh, this is a little bit more expensive than I thought. And this is, I don't have the down payment for something like that, but it's better to know all that stuff up front than to get into a loan or something like that and not being able to perform. And then you're underwater, you're scrambling, you might go into default or any of the negative things that could come associated with not performing on a loan. So I just wanted to put that out there because, again, not being realistic with yourself can bite you in the ass, eventually.
Absolutely. Right? I mean, everything, at the end of the day, when you have bills, they have to get paid, right? So hopefully most people do that. But at the end, at the end of a project, the last thing you want to say is, oh shit, this project was 70,000. Again, I thought it was 50. It's like, would you have done this if you knew it was going to be 70? Which just goes into a couple of questions that I want everyone to kind of ask themselves as you're evaluating your next project, which is, what's the maximum I'm willing to invest in renovations? In order to do that, maybe you need to know, or you should absolutely know, I should say, what is the after repaired value? What equity position does that leave yourself in? And then what is your desired profit margin? And how does that impact your overall budget? So if you want to make $50,000 and, your budget went over by 20,000, again, you're going to make 30,000 versus 50,000. Would you have still said yes to this project at the end of the day? Likely not. Things certainly come up. You ask anyone who opens walls at any house, including myself, you find a lot of things that you're not expecting. And it is important to have a realistic budget. And again, going through that property, getting the information up front. Because when someone says, hey, I need $10,000 and you don't have it, there's no worse feeling in the world. So, kind of just going to roll into some of our next stuff because I want to make sure that people, again, are understanding really what should go in your budget, some of the terms that we're going to use. Some of them I feel like are pretty easy. Some, again, we're just going to be a little bit of kind of a reminder. So,
Yeah.
Denver, let me ask you again, what's after repaired value?
The ARV is it is what you believe that your project, your home is going to be worth after all renovations and it's at market standards.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that ultimately is going to determine your profit. Mm-hmm. It is going to determine how much you should set for a budget. What's a realistic purchase price? Do you have any flexibility if something comes up? Or is this one, everything has to line up A, B, and C. No matter what, there's no room for error. That again is going to be part of that decision overall. Is that property worth it for you or not? And then the next item that we're going to get into is purchase price. So your purchase price should really leave you room not only for the renovations, but also for the profits. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be flipping houses if you're not interested in making money. I'll just say that. So Nobody wants to work for free. And purchase price is going to be one of the determining factors. How much can I actually pay for this house? Hey, I want 150 grand. Listen, Denver, your house is worth $100,000 all day long. There are no comps at 150. And having that conversation with the seller or whoever's representing, that sale on the selling side, and they may not like your offer at first, but your budget because you've done your homework, and stick to your guns. Hey, not every project's a great project for you. We had just talked today about, there's a project that's in Wauwatosa. We had saw somebody list it, and all of the after repaired value comps were in a completely different neighborhood, within a mile of that location. So, when you're trying to negotiate that purchase price, that's something that's important is, hey, I want 250. Listen, man, the house isn't worth 250. It's worth 250 a mile away. It's worth 200 as it sits. So again, knowing your numbers. And then the second thing is repair costs. So that's going to cover all of your renovations, cosmetic and structural. So, we just went to Justin's house today. Shout out, Justin, your house looks awesome. But, there was some things that he had to do structurally to kind of sure up the house, make sure it's a good investment for whoever's coming in, and ultimately it's safe for those people. And I know that means a lot to him, but he's factoring that in structurally. And then also the stuff that you and I went and saw today. It's like new bathroom, new flooring, new kitchen, new cabinets, new paint. New windows in certain areas. The house looked great. And we had a conversation, and is it a house that you and I have talked about a little bit, but it's a cool house.
Yeah, great starter home.
Great starter home. And, something that he knew his purchase price, what he could afford. He knew his repairs. And then the third thing that's going to go into it is going to be the holding costs. So every month that you're holding onto that property, you're likely paying an electric bill. You're paying property taxes. You're paying insurance. And if you do a hard money loan, chances are you're going to end up with a mortgage payment. Yes, it's interest only, but you still have costs every single month. So just something to keep in mind there. And that's something, your lender can say, hey, these payments are $1,500 a month, to use an easy number. And then you can plan, okay, I'm going to be making X amount of payments throughout the course of the loan. What does that look like for me? And then the last thing that you want to do and kind of factor in is selling costs. And I know we're here in Wisconsin. We have a really good idea of what title charges are here in Wisconsin. We have an idea of taxes and that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is those vary from county to county and state to state. So a $100,000 home in Milwaukee may have a tax bill of $3,600, let's say. That same exact house in Chicago, that tax bill is $6,600. That is a big determining factor on holding costs. And of course, also, selling costs ultimately at the end of the day, because, the realtor fees may vary by the area. The closing costs from the title company to get that, home transferred over to your name, that's going to be state specific. Is it an attorney state? There's a lot of extra things that go into that you just want to consider. And when we were doing our evaluation last week of that property, you and I were using a number of 8%. So anywhere from 6 to 10% is pretty normal, again, depending on the property, the area, all of that. But at the end of the day, be conservative. Use 10%. Make sure that that's realistic. Maybe 8, nobody's going to be upset.
Really quick.
Yeah.
I know what it is, but what is the difference between an attorney state and the other?
A title state?
Title state.
Yeah.
Correct.
So ultimately, a title company is going to be the one to transfer over ownership. But in certain states, they like a extra layer of protection, let's call it, for the consumer. So you're going to have an attorney who's going to help make sure that those documents are prepared from title and you're taking legal ownership of what you want. We had just had a situation today, right before this podcast, and a gentleman, owned some land, and when he got, to title didn't really match up with what he thought it was. And it turns out that somebody previously may or may not have made an error, and that'll be for them to figure out. But at the end of the day, he has an attorney in his corner making sure, hey, this isn't what you signed up for. Let's make sure that this is what you want it to be before you move forward. That's a very important step. So again, every state's going to be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. If you have questions on that, contact a local lender, somebody who's licensed in that state. They'll be able to hopefully help walk you through what those closing costs will ultimately look like. That all makes sense? And did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
100%.
Beautiful. So we're just going to keep rolling today because it's Friday and we're feeling it. So
let's do it.
All right. Budgeting basics. So Denver, you need to have a budget. You just talked about that personally. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm making sure my food costs are what they are, gas, car payment, whatever that is. It's the same thing for a house. So you have to have limitations for yourself and respect that you want to be successful. So, what are some really good, just kind of like ballpark figures to use? A lot of people use the 70% rule, meaning purchase price plus repairs should be 70% of what that property is worth when it's all said and done. So I think that there's a little flexibility in that number, so I think that number is a little bit conservative, but also it depends on what your comfort level is. Is this a project that, even if say that number is 80%, but it's a place where a house doesn't sit on the market for more than 24 hours, if marketed and priced correctly, that if it's a slam dunk, it's like maybe my profit's a little bit lower, but hell, if we know it's going to sell, why not?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And then there's a couple of just kind of questions to help you ask, again, just as a really brief reminder. But, when you're talking about the 70% rule or, after repaired value repairs, any of that, is there flexibility in my budget if something happens? That answer should be yes. Spoiler. You need to have flexibility. We talked about it episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. Things do not always work out the way that you intend them to. So if that's the case, do you have flexibility? Right? I mean, it's what this is based on. So leave yourself some wiggle room, make sure that even if you feel like you're making a great decision, there's a little bit of a buffer that says, hey, shit happens every day. Let's make sure that we're comfortable with what we're setting ourselves up for. So awesome. All right. And then just want to talk a little bit about ultimately why we're all here, which is profit margins.
Making money.
Yeah. So again, we talked about being a flipper and diving into this and changing your family's life and really creating a future for yourself that maybe 6 or 12 months ago you didn't think was possible. So that being said, I'm going to jump into this, but right before I do, if anybody ends up doing flips and you start on this podcast, we would love nothing more than to hear about your journey. Tell us what you learned. We love education again, or we would not be here. So please, share your wins, share your losses. We love to hear about them. We love all things real estate, frankly. So
yeah, socials are all in the footers, or if you're watching this on YouTube, it's on the screen, should be on the screen, watermarked at The Hard Money Co., thehardmoneyco.com. Either way, let us know. Drop it in the comments if you want to. We do read the comments, and we love to see the comments.
We do, except for the bad ones. We ignore those.
Yeah, I'll engage because that's just my personality.
Yeah.
But,
He's bad cop, I'm good cop, just so we're all clear. All right. So understanding your profit margins and frankly, your return on investment, or some people call it ROI. So ROI, return on investment, means what are you spending? What are you making back at the end of the day? So many investors aim for a 10 to 20% profit margin. My issue with that number is I don't think that is realistic. In the point that I say, when you're talking about a 70% rule, right? So let's just say that property is 70%, 10% costs. Like, why are we talking about 10% profit when our entire system is set up on 20? Again, I think 10% can be realistic in certain situations. I don't think anybody aims for 10% unless it is the perfect scenario. So again, understanding what you're trying to accomplish, Do you have flexibility at 10%? Not as much,
No.
right? So, set yourself up for success. Factors like your scope of your project, market conditions affect that. Like we're here in Wisconsin. We just talked to Justin today. He said, hey man, my concern in buying another property is I got to list that thing in January.
Winter's
right?
slow.
Yeah, winter slows down. It's like if you are in a warm state, maybe that isn't the case. Or maybe you're in a really warm state like Arizona and nobody's moving in August. You know? So again, make sure that you leave yourself a little bit of a buffer. I would like to see higher than 10%, but some people aim for 10. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Saturated markets can be 10%. I just, would like to leave myself. Yeah, 100%. And what happens if it goes up by 5? But we're here to talk about positive stuff, not negative stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
glass half full.
Yeah. So those market conditions, just understand your market. Again, work with a seasoned professional that can give you their opinion. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but at least hear it. So, and then let's talk about how to calculate your ROI, meaning what are you spending and what are you making back? So we're going to have 2 different kind of examples of this. One of these is you paying with your own cash, right? Maybe you don't need a loan. Maybe your aunt and uncle are rich.
You just got money like that. Like,
yeah.
Hey, you're a beginner. You're not broke.
And we are accepting sponsorships of anyone who wants to change our lives in the process. But
please,
assuming we don't, just an example again. So we're going to buy a house for $100K. We're going to have $30,000 in repairs. Our holding costs, again, is $5,000. Selling cost is $10,000. We're going to add all those up for you. Don't worry. Nobody needs to take notes. Your ARV is $180,000. So Denver, let me walk you through how to calculate your net profit. And then also we're going to talk about ROI, right? So net profit is ARV or what you're going to sell it for, that 180. And then you're taking out the purchase price. You're taking out the repair costs. You're taking out the holding costs. You're taking out the selling costs. In that example, the 100K, 30,000 in repairs, 5,000 in holding, 10,000 in selling. Your all in is 145 grand. Your profit at the end of the day on that project is 35,000. So that's a pretty solid profit, all things considered.
I don't think so.
Hey, give me 145 grand. I'm going to hand you 180 grand in 6 months. Is that cool? Likely it is, right? And then, ROI can be factored in one of 2 ways. That scenario we just gave you, the ROI is, what are you making back on your initial investment? Your initial investment's 145 grand. You're making 35 grand back out of that. Let's just say that number is somewhere between 20 to 30,000 or 20 to 30%. I apologize. So depending again on the market and the property type. Now let's consider that scenario when you're doing a hard money loan. So $100,000 purchase, Denver, what percentage down should a new homeowner or new investor, I should say, plan on having?
20%.
20%. Repair costs are 30 grand. We're going to lend you that $30,000. Your holding costs are 5. So you got 20,000 of your purchase price plus your $5,000 in holding costs, your selling costs, right? Say closing costs, whatever you want to call it. Let's call that 35 grand. So when my out of pocket is 35,000, I'm going to borrow the rest of it from the hard money co, which is a great decision, of course. Then you're going to get 35 grand back additional at closing. Your ROI on your money is going to be 100%. So what am I getting? What am I getting back? Hopefully double. That would be fantastic. One of those situations again, in which, make sure you know your numbers, set yourself up for success. And then, again, lean on the people that are there. Justin told us to know our numbers. He had a mentor, listen to a guy who's successful. We just saw his projects today and he is crushing it. So, and then just some questions to consider, for your profit goals. Again, what is your goal? What do you want to make? And does this calculation above, which we made very simple, does that work for what you want at the end of the day? And then if the property doesn't sell, what do my holding costs look like? How does that affect my ROI? So, hey, I was planning on selling this property by December 1st. Guess what? It's January 1st. How does that extra month of payments affect you? What is your ROI? What is your net profit? Did you plan for contingencies like that? These are all things to consider when, again, calculating your profit margin, calculating if a project is worth it, walking yourself through this. I promise you, I'm not some math guru. I just have looked at enough of these to know, hey, is this a number that gets me excited? Is this not a number that gets me excited? So that's what you need to consider for yourself. And I tell you, before you jump into the properties, have that discussion with yourself or your spouse or your business partner. What are we comfortable with for our time? Time equals money. Time is the only commodity you cannot buy more of. Figure out how much your time is worth to you. Make sure that property pays you that amount of money. I got a little deep there. I apologize.
You did. I was just reflecting.
Yeah.
Just taking it all.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Part counselor here and part educator, we'll say. So,
Man.
All right. And then let's talk about, hard money loans, financing costs, all of that stuff. And I'm just going to skip the boring stuff. I'm going to jump right into the example, right?
Friday.
So yeah. How much does this loan cost me? That's what I want to know. So when you're trying to calculate your loan costs and your payments each month, let's just use some really easy numbers. So we're going to talk about your monthly payments. Hey, my loan amount's $100,000, meaning that's what I borrowed from the lender. Hey, that lender is interest only. They're at 15%. No issue. What's that monthly payment? Do we know how to calculate that monthly payment? So just in case people don't, you're going to take your loan amount of $100,000 times your interest rate, or times 0.15 in this circumstance. That's $15,000. 15,000 divided by 12, $1,250 a month. So at the end of the day, if you're holding that property for 4 months of payments, that's going to cost you $5,000. So again, loan amount times interest rate divided by 12, if it is interest only, will give you the number that you need to make a payment on every single month until that loan is paid off. So a couple of important questions for your lending partner in this situation. How do the different loan terms affect my total interest costs? AKA, what if I keep this property for 4 months versus 3 months? When is my first payment due? I'm going to use this example because we use this every day with clients, but had somebody call in today. When would my first payment be due? You're going to close today, November 15th?
Yep.
Closing November 15th. You're going to skip December. Your first payment is due January 1st. Great. So if I'm going to sell this property by March 1st, say go sells February 28th, you telling me I'm only making January and February's payment? That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So how quickly can you get your project done? Again, how does that different loan term affect my total interest costs? Is it interest only? Is there any principal being paid down? Again, excellent questions to ask your lender. The other question you should answer, and this answer should be no. If it is not no, find a different lender.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Are there penalties if the property sells sooner than expected? In any world, for any lender, that is not a problem, nor should it be. If that's a problem for your lender, find yourself a new lender. Who doesn't want to lend you money, watch you be successful in a shorter timeline than what you initially thought, and then also turn around and be able to lend you money again for your next project? I'm not going to charge you because you didn't keep our money for long enough. I'm going to reward you with another loan and a high five and, hopefully some kudos for crushing it.
Sounds like a loan shark, a predator.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
That's true. It's not Shark Week yet, so people need to stay out of it. But
chill out.
All right, we're going to get into just 2 quick case studies, Denver. I just want to talk about 2 different scenarios because they are entirely different, if that's all right with you, and kind of just some lessons, some takeaways from them. And none of them are going to be like property specific. These are not things that we have actively seen verbatim. These are things that we have seen prior, though. This is what challenges people and or makes them successful on their next project. So an investor buys a single family property for $90,000. They allocate $25,000 in repairs. They sell it for $160,000. It meets their 70% rule. They were successful in selling it, hopefully within that 6 months. So essentially their profit margin was achieved by sticking to their budget and selling the property ideally quickly. We're not talking about holding costs in this case, which you would have to figure out. But again, that is a successful client. Who is not successful? The over budget flipper, the investor who purchases a property for $80,000. Oh shoot, the property needs $20,000 in repairs, but all of a sudden they open the walls. There's a structural issue. Another $15,000. It's like those could be the same people walking into that house. The end. It's not the same profit. It's not the same client. It's not the same win. They're maybe not as happy. Maybe it scares them off from the next property. So the idea is it's important to plan for unexpected costs just to make sure that you have wiggle room. Yes, you may not be super excited, but as you can see from these case studies, one was successful. There's no repairs in the basement. The other one, $15,000. Oh, shoot, I wasn't planning on that. That's 20% of the overall purchase price. If you would have planned, you would have offered that seller $65K instead of $80K. You're baking the $15K into your repairs. Guess what? You're successful at the end of the day. As successful, I should say, as you can be in that circumstance. And then contingency plan, Denver. So when you're a new flipper, what do you think percentage-wise you should plan on allocating towards a budget? I'm going to let you run with this one.
Rephrase the question, please.
Okay. So when you have a budget, let's say of $30,000 for renovations.
Sure.
What do you think? So it's going to cost you $30,000. What do you think you should plan on that project costing you? I.e., how much are you going to build in extra in case something comes up?
Like an emergency kind of
exactly.
That's a good, because I'm like 20% is only like $6,000. That's not that much. 50%?
50% would be a little bit high, but I'm going to say this: if you plan on 50% and that number still hits at 70%, dude, buy that house every single day. No, but I do like, the fact that you thought about that, you decided what's comfortable for you in that circumstance, and like what would you be okay with. And I don't feel like $15,000 is that ridiculous in that circumstance. Certainly if your repair budget's $300,000 and you're baking another $150,000, that's a little bit of a different situation.
Right. Yeah, no.
But I like the fact that you're planning for the unexpected. And if that number still works, you are successful. And if that number doesn't work, move on to another property. Nobody is forcing you to buy these properties. Buy one you are comfortable with, that you can make money, as long as you execute on the things that you said you're going to do. And then there are a few questions that we would recommend that you ask to an inspector, to your business partner, to your mentor, to your general contractor, to whomever it is that you feel like you value their advice enough to at least hear it and hopefully absorb some of it. So, are there any potential code violations that could affect the budget? I'm going to give you an example. We have a client right now that is looking at us doing a refinance for them for a property in Chicago. That property in Chicago had old code violations. They bought this property in the spring. We all know that at certain times, the government doesn't move as quickly as we would like. So guess what? They didn't look for open code violations. There were open code violations that prevented them from doing any work at all on the house until those code violations were satisfied. And they didn't think, to go online, and nobody helped them understand that that is something that they should have gone to do. Does that affect their budget? Does it affect their repairs? Sure. But it also affects their holding costs. It also affects their costs when they go to turn around and sell the property. Maybe they planned on 6 months. They sign up with us for a loan for 6 months. Now it takes 9 months. What are we doing? Are we extending the loan term? Are we refinancing? In this circumstance, they're going to look at a refinance. But ask if there are code violations. Go in the city of Milwaukee and look it up. Look it up in Chicago. Make sure you are doing your due diligence. And then, do you see any major structural issues that could significantly increase your costs? You had said 50%. We're going back to that case study. There was a $15,000 structural issue. That guy would have planned on 50% for his $30,000 budget, and the numbers still worked. Not a big deal.
This guy would have been making money.
Yeah. You're going to make money no matter what, because you're Denver, but make a little more, take it off the purchase price, negotiate with the seller, so are there any big issues? Is there a sewer backup in the basement? Is there a crack in what we call a step crack in the foundation, meaning this foundation is moving? Is the wall bowing? These are all significant issues that can cost a lot of money long-term if they're not dealt with correctly. And then tips for budget management and just you staying on track. Track your expenses. Track your expenses. Track your expenses. Get a spreadsheet, have a budgeting app, track your costs, know what you're spending. How do you know if you're on budget if you don't know what you've already spent? It's going to ensure that you're going to stay on your budget, your contingency costs and your 50% or 30% or 20%, whatever you decide you're comfortable with is going to help protect you when materials go up or there's a significant delay. I mean, we all pretend COVID never existed, which is fine, but COVID factually messed up people's builds. Hey, I know I'm in the middle of building a house. Guess what? My contractor can't get cabinets. Oh, it's supposed to be done last August. Well, now it's March of the next year. That's going to be something that you need to be prepared for, is if you need to go get those cabinets, are they going to cost you extra money? And then if you're using a contractor, schedule regular check-ins. Don't just rely on them to tell you how far they are in a project. I've worked with contractors across the board. My first ever house, I flipped it because I renovated it, I should say, because I was living in it, but I renovated it. I didn't go there every week to check in with my contractors. I wish I would have, because I would have saw how much they weren't doing. So it's, hey, your project's going to be done July 1st. Well, going there in May, you can understand it's not going to be done July 1st. Yeah. So, having that relationship with the contractor, and again, somebody that you know and trust, to give you accurate information. And even if you trust them, it is your money, it is your project, go and check in on it, period. And then avoid over improving. We had talked about that when you're looking for an area to move to. I love solid gold doorknobs. Well, is that required? Probably, probably not.
It's a bit much.
Yeah, it might be a bit much, but understand what that market dictates, understand what people are looking for in that particular area, and then keep that house at or below or hopefully at really where the comps are in the neighborhood. You pulled comps, you think it's worth 200, let's give it the same amount of, fixes and same amount of finishes as that $200,000 house. And you're comparing apples to apples at that point. So check in with your contractors. Don't over improve. What are some good questions to ask your contractors? Are there any ways to save on materials or labor without sacrificing quality? I'm going to talk about a client that we have in Detroit. His original repair budget was $150,000. I said, hey, listen, this doesn't work for what we're trying to set you up for, which is a success based on your repair budget. You are paying retail. Well, I don't feel like I am. Well, you are. Here are the comps. So it's can we go back, and are there things that we could either cut out? Hey, you don't need gold doorknobs. You just need regular doorknobs. Are there things that you can cut out or other ways that you can save money? There's a Habitat for Humanity store. You can go there and you can buy lightly used materials. We put a new refrigerator into our kitchen. I wanted a brand new refrigerator. Did we get one? Yeah, we got one that somebody returned. Had all the tape on it. I paid half for it. It's be creative, budget, and try to find ways to save on those materials and labor where you can. And then how are we doing on terms of staying within our projected timeline and budget is the second question for that contractor. They can tell you, again, whatever it is that they think you want to hear, go and look at it for yourself. Hey, Denver, you said it's going to be $40,000 to fix my house. We're at $40K and I don't see flooring. What are we doing here? Are we on track? And these are just some of the questions that we want people to think about when they're getting into the world of real estate investing. And again, these questions aren't, for everybody to ask on every single project, but it's a very good question to ask when you're getting started. Eventually you're going to have, some, a little bit of a bigger toolbox of skills, let's say, understand what you're looking at and understand hopefully how much that next property is going to cost you to flip. Man, that was a lot of stuff.
Man, it's probably the best episode in the series.
I like to think so.
You killed it.
Thank you. Well, we killed it because we're a team, but
I did what I did.
Every episode
wasn't much.
I appreciate having you here, man. You're a blessing for us. So I'm here to build people up today, not tear people down.
Man, we got to do episodes on Friday more often.
For real. It's maybe it's the weekend. I don't know. Maybe we should just go grab a quick drink. I don't know. You tell me.
Maybe.
All right. But I do want you just to kind of let everybody know here, Denver, we're going to look at some stuff here on episode 6, but, overall, how do you think, this podcast from education standpoint is going so far?
I think it's going pretty great.
Good.
I am speaking from someone who not quite 100% the target market, right? Like I do know, like I did know the term fix and flip. I did kind of understand the process before, getting into it, but I'm learning quite a bit.
Good.
So I think it's going pretty well. A few of our listeners who have left comments and reached out agree with me.
Awesome.
And I hope that through the course of, this mini series and, other probably like mini series that we do in the future, that people, when they do stumble upon this one and, again, more to come, that they do learn a lot, because we are, we're doing our best to be as transparent and get as granular as possible without having direct input and like questions from the audience yet. Over time, I hope that, they'll start, submitting questions, whether again, via the comments or just probably via the comments. Right.
Yeah.
And then we can address those things head on and then those specific inquiries and, topics of interest. But for now, I think, in terms of topics that we cover, it's pretty exhaustive. I don't think we're leaving anything out.
Good. I like that. So this is obviously what we do every day. But, just to kind of reiterate what Denver said, we want to make sure if you do have questions, they are being answered. Our goal is to educate you and break this down a little bit further than just like, you should go flip a house. Oh, my friend said I should get hard money. That was one of our call-ins today. Like, what is hard money? And it's like, hey, did you know we have a podcast?
All right.
Let's check it out. So again, if you guys have questions, we are open books. I love to educate. I'm an educator at heart, and we're here to serve for success, our success, your success. So please feel free to engage with us and let us know what you feel like we're missing. If there's any questions you have, you want us to elaborate further, and we'll do our best to go ahead and do that for you. So I will just going to talk a little bit about episode 6. And then I just want to encourage people to do a couple of things here.
Which is episode, not to confuse anybody, which is episode 35.
I apologize. It is, Denver and I are going on a little different scale. Again, it's Friday. Mistakes were made. We're almost done here. So would you say it was episode 35? 35. All right. 35. So what to expect on episode 35. It's going to be a little bit further deep dive into understanding lending requirements. So I'm the lender. What is it that I use to determine if I think a project is a good fit for us or not? ARV, repair costs, all of that stuff. So we talked a little bit about that. And then let's talk a little bit more next episode about how much you're going to need for your project and maybe some creative solutions to come up with that. I don't have $50,000 for my project. No problem. Let me talk to you a little bit about maybe what we've seen some other clients do to be able to get a jump start on their investing future. And then we're going to break fees down a little bit. Again, fees, interest rate, all that, that's not everything. You want to evaluate a lender as a whole, but we'll dive more into that next episode. I just want to give people a little bit of homework. There are some really easy budgeting calculators that you can download. I don't even need to plug one. Go and find one. There's all sorts in the App Store. You can use Excel to make your budget. But let's have you start. So by the time that you're done with this episode listening and ready to tune in for next week, you have the tools at your disposal to be able to start doing some real life examples. Sound good?
Sounds like we want them to be successful is what it sounds like.
Every day. When you're successful, we're successful. We are tied directly to you as a lender. And there's nothing more that I personally enjoy seeing than people around me being successful and knowing that I played even an educational part in that role and encourage you to get out there and become one of those people. So I'm done, but I appreciate everything. I'm gonna let you sign us off here.
Boom. Enough said. This has been another episode of The Hard Money Co. I'm Denver Biddle III. He's Steve Traub. We will see you in the next episode. Peace.